Hi, SRI. I'm Pat Miguel Tomato. I'm the Director of Socially Responsible Investing at Zevin Asset Management. We're a Boston-based equities manager that builds responsible portfolios for our clients. And then right after we build the portfolio, we realize companies aren't perfect. So like many of you in this room, we use our shareholder voices to move companies forward on human rights, the environment, a range of issues that are material for companies and help our clients create positive impact. And in my work, I have a good deal of interaction with our clients. And I'm an old millennial, 1985 birthday, so it qualifies me to talk about millennials a little bit. And marketers are obsessed with millennials, actually. And their pitches, most of the time, to millennials look really desperate. Domino's invites young customers to order a large cheese pizza now using an emoji, using a pizza emoji. So that's like, millennials love emojis. And according to Bloomberg, net sales at Banana Republic dropped 10% even after it partnered with the popular Instagram account Hot Dudes Reading. Doesn't help to, just be on Instagram to get millennials in the door. The investment industry seems, to me, seems similarly flummoxed by millennials. Confronted with low financial literacy among the generation now aged 18 to 35, wealth managers are turning to smartphone apps that gamify the process of getting an investment account, and still 80% of millennials are avoiding the stock market. So why should they play along? That's what we have to answer, I guess, for them as an industry. Unlike Generation X, American millennials have known war nearly for their entire lives. They felt the brunt of the financial crisis when their parents lost jobs and homes, and now millennials are told that the economy has recovered. Despite massive student debt, increasing inequality, extortionate housing costs in the cities where the jobs are. It's really weird to me when I see media reports and politicians freaking out about the fact that young people don't buy homes anymore, as if that's a problem. It's like, this generation is somehow resisting being loaded with debt to drive the global economy forward at their own expense, and this is somehow a problem. So I hate those. And Elizabeth Warren complains about that too, which is really kind of distressing for me. Young people of color, especially, report being concerned with their basic safety in their communities and in encounters with the police. So considering what they've gone through as a generation, and we're going to generalize the whole time during this talk, one would forgive young Americans for being cynical. But that's not the whole story that we'll talk about today. Millennials want to live their convictions and improve the world that they've inherited. So as a borderline millennial myself, I'll take the liberty to say that Harvard Business Review editor Walter Frick, he was probably right when he dubbed members of my generation cynical do-gooders. That's a good term. They're suspicious of institutions, but still insistent that those institutions, like public companies, can and should do better. It's a little contradictory, but we all want cake and eat it too. So, great. It's a different generation, a different group of people. This is a group of people who say that they want a lot out of their institutions. So socially responsible investing, SRI, is one area of financial management that makes sense, I believe, for millennials. According to Morgan Stanley, 84% of millennials considering investment are interested in socially responsible options. However, ethical wealth managers need to evolve ourselves, the people in this room. We need to evolve to serve this new generation, even though this generation is primed for what we have to offer. A, quote, do no harm approach of screening out bad companies or tilting portfolios in an equity strategy probably won't be enough. The millennial clients I meet in my work at Zevin Asset Management as an analyst and shareholder advocate, they want a healthy investment return, and they also want to work with institutions that see the world as it is in political, economic, and climatological turmoil, and partner with them to fight an unacceptable status quo. You probably see that a lot. Ethical investors can begin to meet that need by recommitting, I believe, to shareholder advocacy, to actively and intentionally pushing the companies in our clients' portfolios to address critical environmental and social issues. And in that sense, I really do believe it's not enough to tilt a portfolio or simply screen Or perhaps look backward at how a strategy may have avoided bad companies over the years when we all know there was no intentionality along the way. We all have to fight impact washing, and it's really easy to fall into some of the fallacies that are swimming around there. Shareholder advocacy, I believe, is a proven technique, but it too must change to reflect the millennials' story. Not as a marketing exercise, but as the only way to serve a generation radicalized by war, economic anxiety, and political betrayal. So we should learn from millennials and their orientation. In the coming years, I expect that socially responsible investing will be remade by millennials in two major ways. First, it will become more critical of our entire economic system, and even more willing to confront the companies and the tycoons that run them. According to a 2016 Harvard study, 51% of young Americans do not, quote, support capitalism. That's quite a long way from doing good by doing well. That's not liberalism, that's leftism. We need to, I think, familiarize ourselves with the difference between liberalism and leftism. These are folks who, in this generation, are talking about and being serious about proposals for Medicare for all, something we couldn't really imagine in the 1990s when market solutions, public-private partnerships were the name of the game. They still are, but young people are thinking differently. As one of our, of course, investment advice, what we offer in this room, won't dismantle an unfair and destructive economic system. But the right advisor can help young investors challenge the public companies at the heart of the old order. As one of our young clients told me recently, quote, I initially thought of socially responsible investing as a way to simply avoid funding and profiting from corporations that do work that I find awful or immoral, things like war, pollution, and mass incarceration. But I've come to be inspired by the process of using shareholder proposals and other active ways that we can leverage investment to put pressure on corporations to make specific changes. Don't you love getting emails like that? That's great. I'm like, oh man, they like what I do. Shareholder advocates use constructive dialogue. Many of my colleagues are here in this room. We're all using constructive dialogue, shareholder proposals, to push companies to respect people and planet. This comes out of a long-standing ethical commitment and our belief that by addressing climate risks and listening to local communities, companies can possibly avoid big losses. That's a great start, but millennials will want to push farther than that. According to a 2014 CNBC survey, fully 40% of millennials report that the corporate sector is a, quote, source of fear for them. A generation that is so wary of capitalism, I want to convince you, wants to hold companies accountable for their role in social ills like low wages, environmental injustice, human rights violations, and political corruption. And so we as investment managers can answer, or have part of an answer, by working on challenging issues, not the easy ones, at the intersection of investment risk and structural injustice. We can raise concerns that relate to both the investment case for a specific stock and, at the same time, the wider social impact of that company or that sector. So that is why, among other priorities, in my work at Zevin Asset Management, we've engaged with companies on the corporate role in the policy fight over raising the minimum wage. We've engaged with companies over their involvement in the American Legislative Exchange Council. It's still a black eye for me that in my portfolio, on and off, we have UPS, a company that sits on the executive board of ALEC and is involved in this unholy alliance between business folks who just want low taxes and less regulation and truly pernicious characters who want to suppress folks' right to vote and make guns universally available all the time to ravage our schools and churches. So we're working on that. We're working on diversity and inclusion. We're working on rooting out prison labor, or encouraging companies to monitor and then root out prison labor from their supply chains, even where it's legal, simply because it's exploitative. So the second way, that's the first way that millennials will remake SRI. The second way that millennials will remake SRI is that they'll influence socially responsible investing by sharpening our words, I believe, and our values. So unlike their parents and their grandparents who clung to a polite taboo against money talk, millennials want to speak about money and everything that goes with it. Debt, job loss, envy, reparations, inequality, wealth, who's got it, who wants it, poverty, privilege, and the fundamental unfairness of the initial distribution. we have a whole new discipline that's being taught in our colleges and universities. It's called history of capitalism. The history of capitalism is rough. In America, it's indistinguishable from white supremacy and from slavery. I think like most scholarship put, capitalists sort of like hard-charging burghers who were out there in the free market, somehow contraposed that ethic with slavery and plantation economies that were languishing and not innovative, when the truth we know now through amazing scholarship is that the capitalists were very involved in slavery and vice versa. And those two institutions, the free markets and white supremacy, have reified each other over the years on this continent. So we have a widespread recognition of that, and it's getting wider. And in politics, we see openness among millennials in the fight for 15, and a new discussion of a universal basic income, along with frank talk about student loan debt and the way in which institutional racism and redlining have excluded generations of Black Americans from economic opportunity, even after slavery. So there's a similar spirit among the fortunate millennials considering socially responsible investing, I believe. Another young client told me recently that in his generation, people with privilege, quote, have started to see that inequality is their problem. They perpetuate it, and they benefit from it, and they have a responsibility to deal with it. I believe the SRI sector, folks in this room, can show millennials that investing in the public markets need not merely reinforce their own privilege. It will if they don't try to avoid it, but it need not. Shareholder advocacy, for example, is a way to highlight the privileges of stock ownership. Among them, access to managers and corporate boards, and use that power to get at genuine social change. We can obviously go beyond this. We can, as wealth managers, as advisors, as trusted counsel, help people in our care and in our relationships give their money away. So wealth managers, and we can also, basically in interaction with millennials, they can help us concentrate our own advocacy. These are folks who are clear-eyed and unwilling to look away from inequality. So why are we as an industry, impact investing, so reluctant to speak about fairness? We'll make a business case, of course. There's always, I'm always looking for the McKinsey report I can cite when I go in to talk to Alphabet or Amazon about diversity and inclusion. But in 2018, with all of the accreted inequality of capitalism swirling with white supremacy and just an acknowledgement that that initial distribution is so unfair, I believe there's room to sit down with companies and talk about fairness, to talk about how their policies are simply unfair and need to be changed, and here's how this will play out in the long term for the company, and we believe there's some opportunities to seize along the way, and you're avoiding risk, but also it's unfair. And if we can, as an industry, adopt, the way many millennials are doing, what I like to call an ethic of reparation, an ethic of justice in what we do, and make it clear to managers across the table, to make it clear to our counterparties in financial transactions, the banks that we operate with, that we believe in justice, and that's where what we're highlighting alongside the business case, we'll be putting ourselves in line with a group of people, the group of young people who are going to help carry this industry forward. We need them. We have to be in fidelity with them. So wealth managers have to change, I believe, to hold millennials' attention. But the good news is they can forget about apps and pizza emojis and gimmicks and all that stuff. Just do everything I just said. While everyone else markets to millennials, the SRI sector can be in a different kind of position. We can, as partners, offer them something quite different, something that confronts unfairness in the way that they know in their bones needs to be done. And then along the way, millennials will remake socially responsible investing for the next generation. So really thank SRI Conference for having me, Folio, First Affirmative, and appreciate your time today.